This is important for those people that are listening, is if you're going to try to do this, us as deer hunters, we keep everything close to our chest. We don't tell anybody secrets. We want to shoot all the bucks. We don't want the neighbors to get them, right? But that's really the wrong philosophy. If you work together, everybody benefits. Out of the 12 neighbors, 4 of them shot the biggest bucks they've ever shot, and some of them have lived here their whole lives. We got 2 of them. 2 got hit by cars. 1 by a truck at 1:30 in the morning. And then 1 got dispersed, and I have pictures of it getting dispersed, multiple photos. And I have 1 that I don't know what happened to. But the thing I'm excited about is I'm going to have 4 5-year-olds next year. I've never been able to document 5-year-olds before. I mean, going into year 6, I'm going to have actually 14 3-year-olds, 9 4-year-olds, and 4 5-year-olds next year.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 243. Bill Vale and Greg Skufca, Pressured Deer Pros and the Circle of Masters. Support for the Big Buck Registry and the Deer Hunt Podcast comes from Hunter's Blend Coffee. Awaken your hunt with coffee purchased directly from farmers around the world, creating jobs and alleviating poverty. Hunter's Blend Coffee, we're hunters too. Polar Works Coolers and the Chill Zone, specializing in the most durable, reliable thermal cups and coolers. Keep your drinks hot or cold in any element. Black Ash Outdoor Products reduce your risk of tree stand suspension trauma with a Tree Stand Wingman, the Tree Stand Emergency Descender System. The Enforcer. Take control of your odor footprint with your personal ozone generator. Covert Scouting Cameras. Remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security. The Horny Buck Seed Gummy. It's all about the freshest seed. Morse's Sporting Goods. A full line of sporting goods without the sales tax. And Big Buck merch. You can get cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirts, long-sleeve t-shirts, and hoodies. And show support for this podcast by visiting www.bigbuckregistry.com/MERCH. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey, this is Bruce Mitchell, the Alligator Man. You listen to my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is Johnny from Rockstar Led Outdoors. You're about to push play on my favorite podcast, the Big Buck Registry.
Hi, this is Sean Asada at iowalandman.com. You are listening to my favorite podcast, the Big Buck Registry.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow predators. My name is Jay, and thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to this week's show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Play. It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we have an ample supply of harnesses to give away from our volunteer donors. If you're in need of a full body harness, please send an email to jay@bigbuckregistry.com. Bill Vale first joined us on episode 216 of the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, and soon thereafter we were inundated with questions and requests to have Bill join us a second time. Well, Bill is back. Bill has recently launched a new project called Pressured Deer Pros, where he has sought out and handpicked a group of experts in different areas of hunting and then brought them all together in one virtual location. Bill refers to these experts as his Circle of Masters. Bill's Circle of Masters show mastery skills from minerals to mapping to habitat to fitness and so on. We plan to visit with each of Bill's masters, and first we visit with Greg Skufca, Bill's habitat expert out of Michigan. We'll get to our entire interview with Greg Skufca and Bill Vale in just one moment. But before we do, let's turn to Jim Keller for the deer news.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the deer news. Our first story this week, Kroger planning to pull gun magazines from all retail locations. This story is from the OutdoorHub.com website. In the latest development of stores banning the sale of semi-automatic rifle, Kroger just upped the ante once more. After increasing the required age to buy firearms in its Fred Meyer stores, Kroger has now told magazine distributors after much consideration they have decided to remove gun magazines from all locations. A post on Facebook goes into more detail about the announcement, but it specifically calls for removal of magazines with assault weapons content, placement of non-assault gun titles to the top tier of the main line, verify placement of non-assault gun titles are next to teen titles or kids' books. First elk hunt in Wisconsin state history will take place this fall. This story is from the OutdoorHub.com website. For the first time, the state of Wisconsin will host a managed elk hunt next fall. Wisconsin DNR took to Facebook to announce the exciting news, where they say the hunt will take place within the Clam Lake elk range of Sawyer, Bayfield, Ashland, and Price counties, where elk were first introduced to the state from Michigan back in 1995. If wildlife officials are correct, the population is projected to grow to over 200 elk this year, and they even hinted a high proportion of bulls could be seen stomping around America's dairyland. Wisconsin's inaugural elk hunting season will adhere to the following guidelines. Season will be open from October 13th to November 15th, 2018, and December 13th through 21, 2018. Only one bull elk may be harvested. Areas where Kentucky elk were released between 2015 and 2017 will be off limits to hunting until the population increases to levels identified in the elk management plan. Only Wisconsin residents are eligible to receive a harvest tag, and harvest tags may be transferred to a Wisconsin resident youth hunter 17 years or younger. Historic grizzly hunt could happen in Wyoming this fall. This story is from the Outdoor News website. The first grizzly bear hunting season in the lower 48 states in more than 40 years could happen in Wyoming this fall. Yellowstone region grizzlies haven't been hunted since they were put on the federal endangered species list in 1975. Wyoming officials released a plan last week that would allow up to 24 grizzlies to be killed this fall. The Wyoming Game and Fish Commission will vote on the plan May 23rd. The Casper Star-Tribune reports up to 12 bears could be killed in an area immediately surrounding Yellowstone and the Grand Teton National Park. Another 12 could be killed on farms, ranches, and other areas not considered typical grizzly habitat. Idaho and Montana are not planning their own hunts since the government removed Yellowstone region grizzlies from the federal protection in 2017. Missouri deer hunters donate nearly 300,000 pounds of venison to food pantries. This story is from the Missourian website and was reported by Morgan Keith. After last year's deer season, Missouri hunters donated 289,292 pounds of venison to the state's Share the Harvest program to help feed the hungry. Hunters started Share the Harvest because they saw a need in their communities, Missouri Department of Conservation Director Sarah Parker-Pauley said in a department news release. We sincerely thank the thousands of deer hunters who support Share the Harvest, along with the many participating meat processors and sponsors. The Department of Conservation and the Conservation Federation of Missouri coordinate with deer hunters who are donating extra venison to more than 100 participating meat processors throughout the state. The processors grind the meat into ready-to-use packages that are given to local food banks and pantries to be distributed to Missourians in need of food assistance. Processing fees are covered entirely or in part by numerous local supporting organizations and statewide sponsors, including Shelter Insurance, Bass Pro Shops, and United Bow Hunters of Missouri. Conservation Federation of Missouri Executive Director Brandon Butler believes that hunters across Missouri should be proud of this outstanding program. This year's donation is equivalent to around 5,600 whole deer and is nearly 100,000 more pounds of venison than last year. 4 million pounds of lean, healthy venison has been donated since the program began in 1992. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here is Bill Vale and Greg Skufca. Bill Vale and Greg Skufca, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. And Bill, I guess I should say welcome back.
Thank you, Jay, very much.
Hey, Jay, how's it going?
It's going well. It's going well. I'm psyched to have some pressured deer pros sitting in the studio here.
Well, it's our pleasure to be here, Jay, that's for sure.
Excellent. Bill, I have to say that we had a lot of comments and we had a lot of requests to have you back on the show. So I suspect that this will please our listeners very much.
Well, I'm flattered. I had a saying, everybody's always glad to see me. Some people are glad to see me coming. Other folks are glad to see me go.
I love your sense of humor, Bill. It's excellent. So we covered a lot about you, Bill, in the first episode that we did with you, and we know a lot. I'll reference people that if they wanted to learn more about who you are, where you're from, that they go back and listen to that episode. But I'd like to hear a little bit about Greg first. Greg, who are you, and how are you associated with Bill?
Well, I'm a retired chemical engineer, and I've been passionate about whitetail hunting for as long as I can remember. And I used to think I was really good at it. And what I ended up being good at, really, I guess this is me talking anyway, is developing a piece of property to hold the deer. But where I wasn't quite as good as I thought I was how to really do proper ambush setups for a mature 5-year-old or older whitetails.
Okay.
And so that's how I ran into Bill. I had tried other consultants, and there's some good ones out there, but they didn't seem to really get me on the path I needed to be on, and Bill did that. He came. I met Bill 3 years ago. I was in year 3 of my property development plan, and he put me on 2 stands. He gave me 2 stand setups, and that's all I could get to because I was busy. I was still working at the time. I hunted those 2 stands, and this is an honest truth. The first day in on the first stand, following the moon calendar, I shot a 142-inch 4-year-old at 12:10 high noon off of that stand first time in. The next time I hunted the second stand that he had set me up on, and I killed a 138-inch 8-point. I would not have shot that buck, but because he had a broken tine on one side, I couldn't see it. But so anyway, that's how I was convinced that the approach to using the moon and the time to hunt, that I was totally convinced after that. So that's how I got to where I'm at. I've been working on a piece of property here. I bought 288 acres about 6 years ago and started developing it. And I ended up putting my own 5-year plan together. And I really focused a lot of my effort on how do I hold the bucks on here, because basically, in my mind, the neighbors are going to shoot them all.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right. And so that's what I've spent a lot of effort on. Is how do you really minimize bucks leaving your property, which I call minimizing buck dispersion.
Okay.
And at some point I can talk about that. I could talk for quite a.
Yeah, we need to bring that up because that's a very good topic, and I think it's probably something a lot of people that are listening to the show often wonder, how do I help fix that? So, Bill, you have brought Greg on as a part of the Circle of Masters, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Tell me about the Circle of Masters that you're putting together. I think we touched on it a little bit in the last show, and we've certainly had conversations about it since then. But just so everybody understands what you're putting together, can you explain what Pressure Deer Pros and the Circle of Masters is all about?
I'd love to, Jay. I realized some years back, and everybody who knows me knows that I love the Lord and I'm a Christian. And I've seen a lot of families falling apart over hunting, this, that, and the other. And not only that, but the main thing is I realized that there was more to hunting than any one man could learn in a single lifetime. So with that thought in mind, about 10 years ago, I set out looking for what I would call men that were brilliant in their particular field. And this ended up being a real smart move for Bill because I learned so much, and I feel right now like my head's going to explode.
Yeah. I
can hardly contain everything that I've learned. And I thought, this is just a shame because everybody out there who hunts, in my opinion, not everybody, but most guys have been just taught wrong. It's not their fault. If they were taught by their grandfather who toted iron his whole life, and nothing the matter with toting iron. But when we're talking about bow hunting tactics and having to get close, modern man has kind of lost his touch with his instincts and whatnot.
Sure, that makes sense.
So what we try to do, what I've done here is I've searched the planet for men with godly character, men with genius level thinking, men with very high IQs, and just mastery at their particular thing. It's like it's their niche in what they do. All hunters are really good at some things and they have weaknesses. I've had a saying, play to your strengths and work on your weaknesses, because everybody has them and everybody's weak in a different way. As I get older, I have to hunt smarter and more brilliantly, because my body just won't take the beat and the elements give out anymore like I used to be able to take it.
Right.
So the whole idea is to teach and hunt smarter.
Okay. So by surrounding yourself with a circle of friends that are brilliant, and this goes back to all kinds of teachings, is that if you surround yourself by brilliant people, then the chances of you being more successful or successful people, then your chance of being successful are way higher than they would be if you try to do it by yourself.
Well, let's just put it this way, many hands make light work.
Yeah.
And ever since I've incorporated these guys onto my team, and I chose them very carefully, my successes went up. All of my clients' successes went up. I mean, it's just, like I said, we are different. We are unique in everything that we teach, and we're eager to do so. So I'll tell you, I'd like to introduce them if you'd like me to.
Yes, please.
All right. Our first guy is Jay, and he is our media master. Thank you, Jay. He is the man who has been bringing knowledge to other people through interviewing all sorts of different hunters on his show. Basically, this is my idea with a twist. In other words, you go all around the country or whatever and talk to all these different hunters. You've got the inside scoop on how to deliver the message and, to make our voices heard. And so, we want to thank you very much, Jay, for joining our team of masters and making our voices to where they'll be heard.
I appreciate that. I'm excited to learn from you guys, because I've been chasing this deer hunting knowledge for a long time through this particular aspect of podcasting and media. And I can tell you I've gotten better, and I've gotten really good at media, but I haven't gotten nearly as far as I want to yet. But I think joining your crew can really help me hone in. So I appreciate the offer, and I gladly accept it.
Well, thank you, Jay. Our headmaster is a very, very special man. His name is Michael Yates, and he is what we call our head grandmaster.
Okay.
Michael is a multifaceted mountain man that lives this life out every day. He has the highest IQ of anyone I've ever met as far as hunting goes. He is a stratagem, meaning his hunting strategies are so detailed and so far finessed ahead of the average guy that it's just insane. This guy goes in and hunts on the ground and routinely arrows nice deer. Now, I have trouble doing it from 35 feet. I'm going to be honest, so this guy had intrigued me from the beginning. And Michael and I have had like 4 arguments since I've known him over deer hunting, and he's won every one of them either through physics, math, science, or whatnot, biology. When you get pinned down by the facts, it's hard to argue.
That's impressive.
Michael
All right.
is a brilliant ground hunter, and him and I are putting together a book called Up or Down. It's a field tactical handbook that's going to help you to recognize automatic ambush points and then how to properly set them up or down.
Excellent. Okay.
All right. Our next guy on the team is Josh. And Josh is our youngest member, but he is also from Tennessee. And these boys that live in Tennessee, there's just something about them. They're outdoors climbing these mountains all the time. And they just know stuff, man. I mean, that's all I can say. And Josh is a master mapper. He sets people on stands using cyber-matching techniques, and they shoot nice bucks off his stands. He never sets foot on the property.
Wow.
And that leads me to a story that happened this last weekend. I was in southern Ohio, and I had a client down there that wanted me to come down for a couple of days, and I went down, and he'd had another consultant there and whatnot, and I got to looking the property over, and when we got to a certain point on the property, he wanted to tell me the Josh story. And so I said, okay. He said, I was driving to Ohio and I had one day to hunt. And he said, so I called Josh and said, hey, Josh, I'm setting up a property, or my property. You've mapped it for me. It's going to be the coldest day. Where would you go? And Josh directed the client to a spot in an outside corner where there was a bedding area there that was loaded with bittersweet, had good thermal bedding and all day sun, you see. And had the guy found the corner that Josh had picked for me, he'd have had a chance at three different decent bucks walking right down the path that Josh had picked.
Okay.
When the guy told me about that, I said, I'm going to have to give him a raise. But Josh he's a real friendly, outgoing guy. He's got some tricks up his sleeve that I'm not even at liberty to say right now because we're getting ready to break the news here coming up.
Gotcha. Okay. Who else?
Then we have my buddy Greg, which we've talked about, but I want to say why I wanted Greg as my habitat guy. Mm-hmm. When I came to his property, see, people have got to understand something. If you've never lived in Michigan and you've never hunted in Michigan, this just doesn't sink in. It's nearly impossible to kill big trophy deer that are under this kind of pressure. They are nocturnal, and like the buck that my buddy Bill Gibson killed late season this year, which I can discuss at a different time. We'd never had a picture of him in daylight, but we pinpointed the day that he would come out of there, and he did. So, but the whole thing is with this whole thing is that we want to keep ourselves focused on teaching people what we know through the different masters that we have. Now, Greg, like I said, with his property, when I showed up here in Michigan, like I said, it's not what he's done, it's where he's done it. When I showed up here to his property, I couldn't believe my eyes. I've been on properties all over the country, and his property simulated Iowa to me. And wow. I just couldn't believe that he had the amount of scraping, the amount of rubs, the amount of deer holding on this 288 acres. I will say that when he got it, it was not that way, because there was just a handful of deer here. And over the years, I've worked real closely with Greg, and his ideas on dispersion and things even went against some of my grain. But at the end of the day, how do you argue with 42 bucks on your property at the end of the season? And we got documented proof.
Wow. Okay. That's a big deal. I can see why you were impressed, Bill.
Well, when you hunted Michigan, like I said, everywhere I go in Michigan on state land and everything, yeah, you're lucky to even see a deer in daylight hours. Greg routinely gets daylight photos of these big bucks. I've never seen a property that the bucks would put up with each other to have that many on it. But with using the dispersion trickery that he uses, the bucks don't really realize that they're jammed in there like that, I guess is the point I'm trying to make.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Anybody else on your team?
I'm going to turn it over to Greg right now. He's going to introduce a few of the other masters.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have 3 other masters that been made part of the team. And I'll start with the first one, Rick Grostefan. And Rick he's a great deer hunter, but the thing that he's best known for, he's a turkey guy. He's a tremendous turkey caller. He won the state of Michigan turkey call 2 years in a row. And winning it once is tough enough. To win it 2 years in a row is pretty impressive. So he's a guy on our team. He's our turkey guy, and that's why he's here on the team. Nice. Another thing, the next guy is Dan Bill. It happens to be Bill's brother, but one of the things that's happening across the U.S. is our hunters are all aging. I mean, it's hard to believe when you get close to 60 like I am that actually happened. But to continue to climb trees into your 70s and older, and even in your 80s, I hope I'm going to be able to do that. You have to stay in shape, and you have to know how to prepare yourself before you do those climbs. And so Dan is a physical tacticianer that basically he's been a health guy all his life and exercise. He actually won Mr. Maryland or whatever.
Mr. Delaware.
Mr. Delaware. And he did that not with steroids like a lot of people did back then. He did it with nutrition. So we have him on the team primarily just to give us a little bit of insight. And if we talk about our school, which I hope we do in a little bit, we'll have something in each of our school seminars where we talk about this and try to get people to prepare themselves so they don't get hurt. We don't want any of us to fall out of a tree or get hurt.
Right.
Or fall something. So.
Gotcha.
And then we have one more, if I can continue.
Absolutely.
And this one's really kind of key to me. Randall Staggs is a gentleman that we've added to our team, and he's our mineral guy. I don't know how the rest of the people are out there. I've tried every mineral out there, and Bill has as well, and he may have some additional comments. But Randall has lived these minerals. He developed his own mineral many, many years ago, and it's out there, but not a lot of people know about it. But his minerals, in my mind, what we would say are probably the most effective that are out there. Yeah. So he's our mineral guy. He's an expert. He's got a lot of biology background. What's interesting about his minerals are they have medication in them that kills parasites in deer. Okay. Why is that important? Because basically what happens is when the deer eat his minerals, they become immune to having these parasites, and then all the food intake they take, they get more out of it, and they grow bigger bodies faster. So if you know about big bucks, they got to reach 5 years old before they'll get their biggest antler set. That's because they're all putting the energy into the body. But what happens is, what I'm seeing in the property, I'm in year 3, going into year 4 of these minerals, is the deer achieve their full body weight a full year earlier. I mean, I'm growing 3-year-old bucks that are over 200 pounds. And we never had that before, because I weigh every deer we harvest. Typically, they're 165 pounds if they're 3 years old. But now we're getting 200 pounders. So I'm a little bit off track here, but Randall Staggs is our mineral guy, and we think he's really, really important because this guy is a legit. He really is.
That's awesome.
I'd like to add that when I met Randall, I thought that, I was skeptical, but it's the fact of the matter is that what Randall's whole theme on this, and this is another thing, in the places where Randall's minerals have been, there's been no blue tongue, and I mean, to me, isn't the best medicine preventative medicine? We're trying to prevent the spread of this disease, and we know it stops blot fly. I'm convinced it has an effect in at least deterring blue tongue. I have no scientific proof except that where Randall's minerals are, blue tongue isn't. So, I'm just really ramped up about the fact that we're starting to think about the big buck while he's still in the mother's womb.
Right.
Getting the minerals he needs ahead of time and getting a jump start. So after 5 years using these minerals, the deer that are being impregnated in deer that have been eating minerals for all this time. And so you have perfect health or optimal health coming together.
Right.
To make it right.
Gotcha. All right.
So that's all of our Circle of Masters. Is basically 8 of us.
The 8 Circle of Masters. All right. Very good.
Yep.
So, Bill, I got to ask the question. You could just go out and find all these friends and stay in contact with them by phone and keep them all to yourselves. Why do you want to share?
Well, I've always had, I believe this with all my heart. What you make happen for others, God will make happen for you. Wisdom is meant to be shared, and all wisdom comes from God, and it was given to me freely, and I'm willing to give it away freely. Why? Because I want to see guys become so efficient at this sport that not one more marriage is ruined over it, that not one more kid doesn't have dad at football practice, and just put hunting in the proper perspective. Because see, people, when they get people like me that are determined, when they get defeated, they don't like it. And it just ends up, to me, I'm so determined, I'm going to sit out there at all costs. Okay. I'm going to be stubborn if I can't be good. Well, that doesn't work, because I learned a long time ago. And just like Greg learned on his property, he had big bucks crawling all over this place. But do you think they're easy to shoot? No.
Right.
Still got to work your tail off for it. But with our techniques and proper timing, you don't have to spend near the amount of time. My slogan on following the calendar is hunt half as much and score twice as often.
Right. Bill, are you more or less the calendar guy? I mean, we've had conversations on the show or just off air, and I mean, you ramble off the moon phases and when things are coming, apogee, perigee, like you're eating a breakfast cereal. Like it's there. It's just always there. But to somebody that's never heard it before, and I've had this, and I'm only saying this out of love for it, is that, and I've had people that have commented, I had a really hard time keeping up with what Bill was saying, even though it's all accurate. So when it comes down to all this, the stuff that's in your head, do you feel like you have to match that intelligence with the person or the people that you picked as well? Do you find like I got to find somebody that thinks about these things as much as I do?
Well, kind of, but I will say this much, that the calendar, anything new always seems overwhelming.
Right.
And what makes me different than other guys is that I won't just sell you my calendar. If you got a problem or don't understand it, call me up and we'll get to the bottom of it. You know, I'll talk to anybody who calls me on the phone. Now, I would like to mention that this year in January on the 31st, if you look back into the newspapers, you'll see near the 1st of January, we had a full moon, but we also had one on the 31st. For 150 years, the moon has been cycling to this closest point. As long as I've been studying in the tide tables, we've never had a tide that I knew of that went over 12 foot 6 inches. But when the moon got to its closest point in this 150 years, we had 15-foot tides, which brought devastation to Boston. I'm sure you read about that in the paper.
Sure. Yeah, I picked up on some of the articles after we talked about it.
Okay, so with that in mind, they had another super moon coming, and I went to Ohio where I could hunt during the super moon.
Yep.
And I hunted for one day just to see what was going on. And I got there at my usual hour for daylight. And right at the crack, I had a couple of does come through, and then nothing until 1 o'clock. Between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock, I saw 58 deer, and I saw 7 bucks and the 200-incher that I'd been after all season and hadn't even seen. And then after this big show of all these deer parading through right out in the middle of the day, right out in the middle of the ag fields, we and my team, had picked the spot for me. And what they didn't know is that I recorded the whole thing saying, I'm putting my own team to the test here. I'm playing like I don't know anything about what I'm doing. And I'm having these guys direct me to the spot. I'm going to tell you what, if a big buck don't die there next year, there's something wrong, because Greg and I have definitely got a spot pinned down in there.
Okay.
Where they travel anywhere in a 500-yard radius, they've got to come by one of us.
Hey, Jay, I'd like to answer your original question about intelligence with all the guys he picked.
Yeah.
Thanks for the compliment. I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No. Well, it's fascinating. I mean, Bill's a really smart guy. I mean, and if you listen to Bill, a lot of people have a hard time keeping up with him. So he's surrounding himself with people. I got to think he's got to be surrounding himself with people that he thinks are as smart or smarter than him in a lot of scenarios.
Well, what's interesting about Bill, and we've become really good friends, he's really a modest guy. You get somebody that's super smart, they get arrogant. Bill's not that way. And,
right.
And all the people, Michael Yates is brilliant. When I talk to that guy, so how does he know that? You ask questions like that, but so our team really is, we're all really down to earth people, and we're all very modest, and we all believe in God, and we're easy to talk with and easy to work with. I mean, one of the things that makes us different than a lot of people out there is we're available. In other words, we've been doing land jobs for a while. Once we get done with those land jobs, we're typically on the phone 3, 4, 5 times with these people afterwards because they have questions.
Right.
And what we're starting to hear now is from a lot of people is, and I'm not at all being negative about the industry, but they're saying that they can't get their questions answered. So that's something that we're going to continue to stress with our team is, if we're going to have clients or have people that want help, we're going to help them.
Yeah, gotcha.
And
getting back to your question on intelligence that I let slip my mind in, that, by the way, is the only thing we have on the deer. The deer have us in every other angle. They can outrun us, they can outsee us, they can outhear us, and they can definitely outsmell us.
Right.
So if we don't have an ace in the hole, which, in the Bible, the Lord talks about giving us dominion. Dominion comes through intellect. People are looking for a buck in a bottle cure. Good luck. I was looking for one of those myself for quite a long time. What I found out is there's no such thing, not really. Something may work once and never again. There might have been particular circumstances behind that event that weren't even noticed by the hunter.
Gotcha. When was the first time you ever picked up a solar calendar, Bill?
I began studying the moon in high school,
Okay.
as a project.
Okay.
For science. And then later in life, I was quite a fisherman in my teens and going into my early 20s. And I picked up a book by John Alden Knight called Moon Up, Moon Down. And I read that book. And even though a lot of his information was dead on and whatnot, his times did not work. And what it is that when the moon swings into what I'm going to call the pre-activity period of the position for the deer, it stirs microactivity first. Okay, let's relate this to fishing while we're at it. So the plankton and all of the insects and things like that become active first as the moon begins to swing in position. Then after that, the bats and the birds, stimulated by the insects, the plankton stimulates the minnows. The minnows feed, the insects are active. Now with the birds come the panfish coming in that are stimulated by the sight of the activity of the minnows, plus the moon is beginning to pull on them. See, it's a weight thing. And then finally the predator fish, and along with that, the bigger prey of the air, the birds of the air, and whatnot. And you can watch these activity spells happen right before your eyes. So when I first started using the calendar, it didn't work. Well, then one year, my son, who helps me put the calendar together, it was working during the dark period, no problem. But it was the daily times that were thrown off. And so my son made a mistake, an hour and a half mistake, And that year, we had more bucks shot than any of the other years, right on the times, So I said, we're on to something here. And that's when I developed the lag time.
Gotcha.
So if you go to the National Observatory in Washington, D.C. and look at the moon times, and if they're using those moon times, which match that National Observatory, they're hunting for microlife.
Gotcha. All right. That's good to know. That's very good to know. So there's this story that we've talked about this a little bit, and you have a couple of interesting stories about you had a team effort basically on this property. This Corey in southern Ohio. And I think it was about a deer recovery of some sort. Can you speak of that?
Oh, sure. That was my buddy, Scotty. And I've known Scotty, been helping him with his property for, I think this will be the 4th year. We've been working a 200-inch buck together. I haven't been hunting for him. I've just been trying to help Scotty get him. And after this guy is something else, man. He's only 33 years old. But if that buck don't make Boone and Crockett, he won't shoot it. He just keeps passing deer to the point where I'm saying, dude, you're passing deer. This is insane. The deer you're passing, But anyway, he broke down late season this year and decided to shoot a 16-point buck on the ground. And it was just at that time of night, and the deer was quartered to him just right, and a bad shot developed. It wasn't Scotty's fault by no means, and he did a brilliant job of sniping the buck off of the ground, utilizing some of Michael Yates' ground tactics. Okay, he made a mistake. He trailed the buck a little too soon, and the buck ended up in the next 8 to 10 hours being bumped 3 times. Okay. They lost the blood in the blowing and drifting snow. And by day 3, I got the phone call. And I said, Scotty, why didn't you call me before? I have never seen a deer bleed like this deer bled and make it as far as he made it. It was just mind-boggling. Before I left Michigan, I did my usual thing. I analyzed the situation, pulled my usual cybro tricks, figured out the best defensive position for the buck. And because I used something as known as the first cover variable, meaning if a buck is very seriously wounded, he will generally hold up in the first cover available. He had done that already 3 times.
Okay.
He had only went 200 yards between each jumping. So I knew that after this jumping, chances were the buck was going to get out of town, and that's exactly what he did. I put an X on the map, roughly a little over a mile from there, and the buck had already covered about a half a mile. All right, so I left Michigan. I got there early morning, and after about 4 hours of looking around, I found a drop of blood in a bed, and I reached down and smished it between my fingers, and it felt a bit warm yet. And then I smelled it, and it just stunk horrible. And something just told me this buck is still alive. I better back out of here. I better not, push him anymore. I don't know what it was, but when I smelled that smell, I thought it was gut, and it wasn't. It was gangrene. But neither way, it was the smell of death, and I knew that deer wasn't dead because of the temperature of the blood in the bed.
Okay.
Now, so I pulled out, told Scotty, because we had a melt coming. We had a couple of weeks of these 35-mile-an-hour winds and blowing snow. But Michael Yates taught me about the snow cone effect. Now, I've been hunting my whole life, never heard anything about no snow cone effect. But what the snow cone effect is a brilliant way to allow the blood trail to come back to life, because as the snow melts, the blood magnifies or leaches into the snow, and it brings the blood trail back to life. Right. It looked like a doggone war party went through there when they get on there. So with that said, I told him to leave his house when the snow started melting off his house and take his bow with him.
Yeah.
Well, he left the house at the right time, but he didn't think he was going to need his bow. And he promptly, using the snow cone effect that I'd learned from Michael, slipped up on the buck and got the buck was laying there apparently dead with his head down. So Scotty thought, what's the harm? I'm going to snap a picture of him. So he took a picture of the buck, and with that, the big buck jumped up out of his bed and decided to go on another 1,500-yard jump. He went in a big circle, and now Scotty is just burnt, man. 4 days looking for that deer. He's fried. He can't think. He's telling me on the phone, Bill, I just can't think. And I said, okay, let me do that for you. I said, what I want you to do is sit down. You got any food with you? He said, yeah. I said, I want you to eat something and take a 5-minute time to take your mind off it. And then in that 5-minute time, I asked God to help me. And I said, where would a deer hide to try to beat a human that's been looking for him? And I thought to myself, what better way to trick a human than to go back to where the human had already looked.
Right.
And that was back on the X that I had put there before I left Michigan. He was there when I got there, and he was there. He went back there to die. The reason why is because the winds at the time gave him a 180-degree defense from the rear, and he had his back trail covered with his eyes. No problem.
Gotcha.
We recovered the deer. Scotty went back to that spot, was amazed to find him there, and put the third arrow in him. And after 4 days, we took the near Boone and Crockett buck home.
Beautiful. That's excellent. Great story.
Thank you.
Let me.
I've got
go ahead.
documented cases of where I've done that, but I've been doing that as early as 1990 something.
Before Google Maps existed.
Yeah.
I had 22 miles of maps plexiglass to my moon room around my hunting.
I can envision that. That's quite a visual, Bill. That's crazy. Let me run something by you guys. I went ice fishing yesterday, and beautiful day on the ice. Didn't catch a thing. Didn't really matter. We're just having a good time. And one of the guys I went fishing with is a state biologist, a deer biologist for the state that I live in, New Hampshire.
Okay.
All right. And we get in the conversation. He said that, and there's always budgetary problems, said that the hunting licenses are on the decline. However, this year in the state of New Hampshire, they had the 5th largest kill on record. They had the number 1 mature buck kill ever. And
Wow.
Right. I said, wow, that's interesting. Said there was an uptick in archery licenses, but all the other licenses have declined. Yet here we are able to have the largest mature buck kill ever in the state of New Hampshire. What do you read into that?
Timing is probably a lot of it. You'll notice that on the years where some hunters are successful, there will be a lot of hunters successful, and it always happens during the same time. It's like somebody flips a switch. Everybody will be shooting the bucks for about a week, and then it's like somebody flips the switch again. So basically this year we had some pretty good lineups. I'd be interested to have the data of when those bucks were shot. I would be willing to bet, without even looking at the statistics, that most of them were shot within 7 days of the new moon either way. And if it was during the first quarter, they shot them at night. And if it was the third quarter, they shot them in the morning.
That'd be some good data to look at, wouldn't it?
Yeah. You'd also have to look back at the historical data, like how many bucks were shot in the previous couple seasons. Because you can have a case like if you have bad weather during that first, I don't know what the seasons run up there, whether you use rifles or not, but if you get bad weather in a season, a lot of those bucks can make it through. So the next season you end up having a lot more bucks around because they weren't harvested the previous year because weather can impact it.
Right.
That just basically is a deer numbers. It's a numbers thing, right?
Right. Well, I'll have to
also. Go ahead, Jay. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'll have to look into some. I'll see if I can collect that data from my biologist friend, get it over to you. Maybe we can break it down a little bit. Sorry, go ahead, Bill.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What we do basically when we break data down is we take trail camera photos and we measure them against the moon and the weather on that day. The wind direction, of course, but there's a lot of different variables. We look for barometric pressure. Temperature says a lot to us. We look at everything. It's a pleasure to look at stuff when you see that what you're hoping to see is there.
I mean, if you want to talk about game cameras, a lot of people when they get a big buck game camera, a picture of it, they get all super excited. First mistake they do is they start going in every 5 days to look and see if he's still there. Well, what they're doing is they're starting to educate that buck. But when we get a big buck picture, we want to know exactly when he was there and why, and what was the wind doing. That way you can hone in on them and then harvest them. And so I'll try to get a little more predictability when you're going after a certain animal.
Right. Gotcha. Well, Greg, let's talk about minimizing buck dispersion. You're the expert in this arena, and you impressed Bill on your Michigan property. Said it looked like Iowa. I want to hear more about this whole project because a lot of this stuff sounds like it was done before joining this group of masters.
Well, I was certainly on that path. So probably the best way for me to explain this is to start with an analogy. So let's say we'll talk about people. So we're in this little town in the Midwest, and there's a bar. There's one bar in this town, and it's the only bar that's there. Everybody goes to that bar, all the girls, all the guys, big guys, small guys. They all go to that bar, and there's one guy there. He's just one tough dude. He ends up getting in a few fights. He gets all the girls, and basically a lot of those boys, young men, leave. They go to find a different bar in another town. You can do that analogy with deer as well. When you have a large, mature animal, it's not necessarily the one with the biggest antlers. It's the one with the biggest body, biggest, toughest personality. He will disperse. He will run the bucks off your property. That's why a lot of people will get pictures during the summer while they're in velvet, and then all of a sudden they're gone. They never see them again. So here's how I applied this to what I did. I said to myself, well, what if you had, I'll use the same human analogy. What if you had 4 bars, one up on the ridge, one down by the river, one downtown, and one out by the interstate? Now, everybody's going to that same bar, or the best bar where this big bad guy is. But now when they leave, they say, well, I'm just going to go over to there, to that bar.
Yep.
So that's really the simple concept of what I did is I looked at that and I looked at the property and said, okay, I'm going to break this property into quadrants. And I'm going to give that buck every single thing he needs times 2 in that quadrant. And what I start to call it is dimensions. How many dimensions can I put to hold a given buck there? So you'd say, well, can I hold 4 dominant bucks then? The answer is lots more than that. And can I take a few minutes to talk about why dispersion happens?
I'm all ears.
Because there's about 4 or 5 reasons. So the first dispersion in deer happens when a buck's 1.5 years. This is very common knowledge. The mother, when he has his first set of antlers, testosterone kicks in, he goes out of velvet. That mother doe, that dominant matriarch doe, she's going to chase him viciously right out of the property.
Right.
And I have not been able to catch that on any of my cameras, but I've caught dispersion on my cameras. But so that happens, and that's Mother's Nature's way of preventing inbreeding, right? So that happens. The next thing that happens is, we really feel strongly about the theory of the dark period, which is a few days before and after the new moon every month. That's when most of the deer activity occurs. And so when we're getting close to breeding season in September, October, November, but typically in September in this area of the country, that first doe, I think most people realize all the does don't come in heat in a given month, right? There's some in early months. It depends upon their age, so on and so forth. So about 6 to 8 days before the new moon in September is typically when the first dispersion occurs of the older bucks. What happens is the bigger buck in a given area, he will run out, beat up, chase away that inferior buck. It could be a 5-year-old chasing a 3-year-old. It's no contest. They don't do a lot of fighting. He gets run out and he'll leave. Then the first doe comes in heat. Now what the bucks you have remaining are more equal, big bodies, big antlers, and they actually fight. And usually one will end up losing and that one will get dispersed. That happens when that first doe is just about coming in heat, and it can occur when they're standing with her.
Okay.
So that's the primary dispersion. Those two dispersion cases occur right around the dark period, just a little bit before the new moon and right about at the new moon period. So now you've had your bucks dispersed and they've gone out to different terrain. And then what happens is you get leaf drop. And if you think about it, we always see the deer just seem to disappear when the leaf drop occurs. Now, why is that? It's because suddenly their whole structure of safety and security and cover is gone. Their whole hiding places got way smaller. So now what happens is now you have dispersion happen again because these bucks are running into each other because they can't hide from each other and stay out of each other's way. So all this dispersion is what I've worked on my property to develop. I don't have just one big food plot, right?
Yep.
I actually have 22 food plots on my property.
Okay. All
equally divided in certain quadrants based on terrain. And then I talk about, whether you're doing hinge cutting or whether you're doing timber cutting, clear cutting. Every quadrant of my property has those bedding diversities. I've got lots of sanctuaries. I don't just have 1 or 2. I've probably got 15. Water. You got to have water in every quadrant. So that's how I really did this. And that's why I'm able to hold so many bucks. Now, you can't stop them from going off your property. You can't. It happens. But your core, what I'm trying to do is have my property be the core area for as many older bucks as I can. And, we had 14 bucks that were 130 inches or larger, up to 150 inches last fall on the property. We had 14 of them. I've got documented pictures of in velvet, out of velvet, and then being shot. Some of them were shot. Okay. And harvested. But, and at the end of the season here, and I've actually got charts year by year. You can tell I'm an engineer, showing right. Changes in age classes of 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 5-year-olds. But at the end of the season this year, in December and January, I run 14 game cameras all the time, year round, because I'm always learning stuff. And I had 42 different bucks on the property, which is crazy. And it's hard for me to believe. Last year, I only had 26. But part of it is the habitat is starting to develop. I figure I'm still 2 years away from being optimum. Every one of those 42 bucks I can verify with multiple game camera pictures, and I can even show where those game cameras were located based on the background.
Okay.
And so it's just been amazing to me how it's all come together. One of the last things I'd mention is I formed a neighborhood cooperative, and I think I have 12 neighbors that join my property. And this is important for those people that are listening, is if you're going to try to do this, you have to, us as deer hunters, we keep everything close to our chest. We don't tell anybody secrets. We want to shoot all the bucks. We don't want the neighbors to get them, right?
Right.
But that's really the wrong philosophy. If you work together, everybody benefits. Out of the 12 neighbors, 4 of them shot the biggest bucks they've ever shot, and some of them have lived here their whole lives, right? So they did get 4 of my 14 bucks. We got 2 of them, the biggest. We missed 2 with rifles and muzzleloaders. We can't shoot straight. I found out about my great best friends I have. If we could shoot, we would have had 4, but we only got 2. 2 got hit by cars.
Yep.
One by a truck at 1:30 in the morning. If your farmer doesn't get his corn off and they're crossing the road and it gets into November, you're going to lose them. I had no other deer killed. Just 2 of my bigger bucks got killed by vehicles. And then 1 got dispersed, and I have pictures of it getting dispersed, multiple photos. And I have 1 that I don't know what happened to.
Okay.
So I was 14. But the thing I'm excited about is I'm going to have 4 5-year-olds next year. I've never been able to document 5-year-olds before. Going into year 6, I'm going to have actually 14 3-year-olds, 9 4-year-olds, and 4 5-year-olds next year.
Wow.
So it's mind-boggling, but it's fun.
I'd like to add one thing to this dispersion thing as well. I've noticed that there's a lot of other reasons why deer will dispersion on your property as well. In other words, some properties are good early season, some properties are better during the rut, some properties are good late season. What that has to do with is the type of bedding that's there. Some places have no thermal bedding. Well, if the deer can't stay warm, they're not going to stay. If the food's out of balance, they're going to leave. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that when the restaurants close down up the road, you're going to have to go someplace else.
Right. How long do you think it takes a deer to decide that, hey, I'm not hanging out here any longer?
Well, let me just tell you real quick the story that I put in my book about this. So I had this beautiful 3-year-old 10 point. Mm-hmm. He has G2s, G3s, 12 inches long. He had 7-inch brows. And I said, that is the buck we have to protect. He's awesome. And I had this 3-year-old 5 point. And I got videos of that 5 point, not videos, but game camera pictures, running him around a field. And I never got another picture of him after that. And I had pictures every week of that buck all summer and into the fall. But after I got the photos of him being chased, and what was interesting, if you look at body language of deer, and I want to stress to people, you really got to watch the deer because their body language tells you a lot. The buck that was chasing him, the 5 point, had his tail up, and the one that was running has got his tail down, just like a dog that's getting his butt beat. So it can happen quickly. It really can. Okay. It just depends upon the scenario.
I'm just thinking about your neighborhood cooperative, and it sounds a little bit like QDMA, but man, and I'm also thinking about how many, like the neighborhoods could be large tracts of land, could be small tracts of land. That you have to coordinate a lot of individual people, and what if there's public land mixed in between? And how do you kind of coordinate all that stuff?
Well, let me just, modern texting, I've actually become friends with a lot of these neighbors.
Okay.
And, well, let me tell you what happened. In year 3, at the end of year 3, I went and visited a couple of these guys and met them for a burger, right?
Yep.
And they said, Greg, we did not believe you when you came around. We didn't believe you in year 1. We didn't believe you in year 2. We thought you were just wanting us to not shoot those small bucks so you could shoot them. But they said, but then when you went 3 years in rifle season, we heard 1 shot, we knew that you were telling the truth. And now we're seeing all these bucks. We are totally on board. So there's some things that it's actually the neighbors, they go through this learning curve just like you are.
Okay.
You got to be honest. I show pictures of the deer when we shoot them. I send people out and text, hey, we got one tonight. We'll let you know what it is, right? And I know for a fact a lot of my neighbors have not shared with me deer that have been shot because they've disappeared. And I'll tell you one quick story, and I did not handle this correctly. There was a 13-point, 2.5-year-old 13-point this season. And I had a really nice young man on the property line that had shot 2 bucks, a 1.5-year-old one year, and then a 2.5 the next. And he was following. He said, Greg, I'm on board. I'm going to shoot the older bucks. Well, I let people know that this buck was around. I said, you know what? We should try to let him go because he's 13 points today, 2.5. Well, he ended up shooting that deer. That young man did. And I didn't handle it right because I thought I made the deer more important than the person. That was the biggest buck he'd shot in his life. And instead of being able to celebrate it, he had to hide it because of the way I handled that. So I've still got to fix that. I don't know how I'm going to fix that relationship, but I'm going to. That was a great lesson for me. But so getting back to this neighborhood cooperative, you got to be honest. We're all the same, man. We're all built the same. We all care about certain things in our families. I don't have a state land issue around here, so I couldn't really tell you what to do about that other than the fact I would think could be a negative because if people know you've got a lot of big bucks on your property, they're going to be hunting your property line like crazy.
Right. Well, I would think the same thing. And I'm just thinking about, like, there's probably some people listening to this, probably a lot of people listening to this that only have access to public land. They don't have land of their own, but they're still hunting. And they maybe not. They'd like to achieve this. Maybe they're just out to put meat in the freezer. I don't know, and could care less about the larger bucks. But I'm trying to figure out how you do that on public land. I don't know if it's achievable.
I don't think it's true that there aren't big bucks on public land. I think what happens is there's so much pressure. The bucks they get conditioned to be super, super smart and a lot more cautious. And what people got to realize is a mature buck doesn't go anywhere without scent checking it first. Once they get conditioned, right? Bill's told me this story and it really went home to me is if you're going into an area of heavy cover, a buck will never go in there without scent checking it first. Well, why not? This heavy cover. Because if there's a coyote in there, he's going to walk right into it and the coyote's going to bite him, right? So a young buck does that 3 or 4 times. He goes in there without scent checking it first and he gets conditioned. So, ultimately a mature buck that's 5 years old, he's just a different animal and you can't hunt him the same way as you do other bucks. So on state land, they're there. I mean, where Bill hunted, he saw that big 200-inch booner where we put him on that spot down there. Yep. That was state land.
Okay. Gotcha.
In Ohio.
Okay. So
I've been hunting state land for a long time, and basically how I pull it off, this is my strategy. I don't hunt morning or evenings too often on state land, maybe evenings more. But I'm usually walking in the woods when the hunters are walking out. Like if you take my supermoon hunt that happened there on 31st, if I'd have showed up at dawn and hunted till 10 and come back at 4 o'clock and hunted till dark, yep, I'd have saw 4 deer.
Right.
If I'd have came in at noon and hunted till 4, I saw 58. That's what I saw between, 1 and 4 or noon and 4, something like that. So here the deer are also conditioned to when it's dangerous to move and when it ain't, and one of the times that they're never bothered is during the middle of the day. So I just am generally in the woods when other hunters are, or when I hunt state land, I follow strict rules. I'm going to be there first and I'm leaving last. And if they move any deer, I'm going to be there all day. So if they move any deer in and out, I may take advantage of that as well.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Very good. Let's talk about your book a little bit more, Greg, your Monster Whitetail Buck Magnet. Tell me about that book. How did you develop the concept and what went into it? What were some of the life lessons?
How much time do I have? Actually, I have
This is a podcast. You have as long as you need.
Well, Bill talked me into writing the book. He says, Greg, you got to tell this story. I said, oh, really? I'm not really a writer, but I ended up writing it. And the way the book starts out, I actually tell the story from the minute I got up in the morning and went out hunting on that stand that Bill set up the location for me. I mean, I put the stand in. I didn't pick his tree because I don't like his trees. His trees are no branches. I got to have branches. I'm afraid of heights. But anyway, so the book just goes through that whole hunt, and I think it puts in perspective for people about what we all go through when a big buck comes in and you shoot him and you're successful at it. But anyway, the book totally breaks down the 5-year plan, how I put it together, all the steps, the mistakes I made. There's a chapter about it in dispersion, with a lot of photos. I haven't talked much about licking branches and stuff like that because there's other techniques that go into minimizing dispersion. It's not just having the habitat and the minerals and the water and the security. It's also about other things that you can do. Licking branches. I've set up scrapes and I've learned scrapes techniques from a lot of different people reading on the internet, but I do my own thing now. I've got one particular scrape I set up, and it's just a single basswood branch in a certain way. And I've got a photo of 5 does in it with their nose all in the branch. So you learn about that kind of stuff. And if you can get a lot of scraping going on your property, the bucks don't want to leave. So I had probably well over 300 scrapes on my property this past season. I didn't count them, but when we were tracking a deer, I saw 25 in a straight line that was 100 yards long. But the book basically goes through how I did the neighborhood co-op, the conversations I had with every single neighbor. And what's interesting is the guy I bought this from was popular with half the people and the other half hated him. So I learned all this stuff. Like, for example, there's an old farmer across the road. He's in his 80s, still farming. He actually made all the piles of rocks that are on his property. There's piles of rocks that they used to farm it. And he didn't like the guy because the guy wouldn't let him bring his backhoe in and clean out the ditch that drained his farm field. Now, why wouldn't you let somebody do that, right?
Yeah.
So basically what I did, I went around to all the neighbors and I asked them what's important to them, how's it going, how do you like deer hunting, told them what I was going to do, and I found out what they needed. One guy wanted firewood. So when I did my logging that I did of hardwoods, I had him come in and take a lot of the stuff that was good for firewood for free. Come on and get it. So relationships were important, but the book goes through it. There's basically 9 different things I talk about in the book, from dispersion to bedding to food. I talk about how to plant certain things. I talk a lot about miscanthus bedding areas. That's a new thing a lot of people are doing. Giant silver miscanthus bedding areas are phenomenally effective. And it's not just planting a square grid of miscanthus. If you design it properly, they are ambush killers. So that's something that I've got going as well. I just put in a 3-acre miscanthus bedding spot. I've got experiments going all over. I really don't want to talk about some of them right now, but I'm working right now on a coyote-proof buck bedding spot. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's fun doing it.
Wow. All right. So we got to back up just a little bit. Miscanthus. You got to tell me about that plant.
Okay.
And then I got to hear a little bit about this coyote-proof bedding area. This is crazy.
Okay. So the giant miscanthus silvergrass, it's basically a grass that grows. It takes 3 years to reach maturity, but it gets to be 12 feet tall.
Wow.
And it's very, very rigid, so it can handle snow loads and everything else. Switchgrass is really good, but switchgrass gets snow, it knocks it down. And it's only 5 to 6 foot tall. So this stuff, and then so once you plant a plant, it's a tuber. It's like planting potatoes. So if you're going to put miscanthus bedding areas in, it's a lot of work, but they last 15 to 20 years. So it's worth it, and they're fairly expensive. But you place a tuber, you got to dig a trench. You put them basically 4 inches down. You got to cover them up with 4 inches of dirt. But they're very hardy, and in 3 years, they're 12 to 14 foot tall. And once established in year 4, they grow outward in circumference 6 inches a year. So what that does, if you plant your boundary on the outside of the miscanthus bedding area relatively tight, let's say 18 inches apart in staggered rows, that'll be solid in 5 years, let's say. So why would that be kind of interesting? Well, because now you can put entrances where you want them, right? You know how mature bucks want to enter a bedding area. Yep. Once you know that, you can set up your ambushes accordingly.
Aha. All right. I see where you're going with this. That makes sense.
It goes back to the old theory of, if you find an apple tree that the deer are coming to out in the woods, you got to figure out how to beat them at that apple tree. But if I get to plant that apple tree, it's a different story.
Exactly.
Right.
So miscanthus is, you buy them by $125 to a bag. They're roughly 65 cents to $1 a piece. So it can be quite pricey. It takes like $1,500 per acre or so you can see how it could add up quick. But I'll tell you what, they are awesome once they get grown up.
Okay.
Not only that, but when the people around you start cutting their corn, it's a bingo, here they come hiding spot. I had a guy
I bet
7 years ago in Pennsylvania, and he called me just a couple of months ago and told me that in the last 4 years since that thing's been mature, they banged a 160 or better out of there coming to that thing on the day they cut the corn.
no kidding.
They shot 5 in 4 years over 160.
Wow.
And the other thing about miscanthus, and I've successfully put in both switchgrass and miscanthus. Switchgrass is a little bit tougher to get established because of weed competition, whereas miscanthus is just tough, man. That stuff it grows. First year is 3 to 3 foot tall. Second year is 7 foot tall. Third year is 12 foot tall.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Some unbelievable stuff.
Super plant. Wow. That's neat. So what about the coyote-proof bedding area? How the heck do you do that?
Well, it has to do with creating a bedding area that's got water.
Okay.
Coyotes don't like to swim in water over their head.
Right.
Right. So that's the concept. So it's something you do with an excavator. You create a bedding spot that has water around it. And so that's in experiment phase. It's done. I've got it built. The next thing is I'm going to be putting switchgrass and miscanthus on it.
Nice. All right.
And eventually it'll take me a couple of years, but in a couple of years it should be, I'm hoping I'll be able to actually have a bachelor group bed on it. And because let me talk a little bit about dispersion again. There are cases where you will have 2 bucks that are equal on your property. And I've had that. Matter of fact, one year I had 3 that were equal. They fought all the time, but they were always here. Why didn't they leave? Because they were equal. What tends to happen then is you wouldn't see them together during the breeding period. They'd be around. They stayed away from each other. They respected each other. Right. So sometimes when you're out hunting and even during the rut, you'll have 2 bucks traveling together. That can happen. They become buddies or respect each other. I don't know what it is, but I'm hoping that these bedding spots I'm developing will ultimately be able to hold multiple mature bucks at the same time.
Yeah. I've seen that. It's like big buck doesn't want to hang out with little buck, but on occasion they'll hang out with an equal. It is funny how they do that.
The other thing that we do as far as coyote proofing is if you design your miscanthus bedding areas with narrow corridors for travel for the deer, the only reason why a deer is at a disadvantage is when he's in the field and he's got several coyotes circling him, they're going to try to hamstring him. Well, that's a different ball game when that coyote can't swing because of the switchgrass.
Right.
That big buck will lower his head and he'll finish that coyote himself.
Right. Makes sense. All right, let's move on to this other amazing thing you got going on is Tactical Whitetail University seminars.
Yes, sir.
What's going on with that? That's I don't know. It just seems like people will be lining up out the door.
Well, I hope so. It's our goal to educate and to help people. I mean, all right, so it took me 4 decades or better of hunting. At our university, I have designed a curriculum that will take anywhere from an average hunter to a guy that's had no experience at all. And if he's aggressive, he's, coordinated, physically fit, he can become, everything I know tactically, learn it not only out of my books and whatnot, but from the field for me. And in 3 visits to our Tactical Whitetail University, you can leave a master level hunter.
Okay.
So basically what it is it's we're actually teaching hands-on. There's classroom stuff because we got to teach it like the wind and even some of the habitat stuff. There's classroom stuff where you do that, but it's in the field where we're going to have spots and areas. We'll take groups of guys down there and say, okay, tell us how to set this spot up. First of all, you got bedding there, you got food there. How are you going to hunt this? And we're actually going to teach them how to identify ambush sites and then properly set them up, and also how to properly enter and exit them, because that's the number one mistake people make. All my buddies do it. I'll tell you a story. This is worth telling. So I got a hinge cut. I only use hinge cutting for making buck bedding areas specifically. They're very small. Yeah. And I made one up on a flat. And last year I was I had a mineral station back there and a camera, and I was walking by this bedding area. There's an old trail there, and I look over and I see a buck. This is the end of May, mind you, was outside his ears in velvet. And there was another one back in there further. I could see his antlers as well, looking right at me at 20 yards. And I'm blowing right at him. And I walk by him, and go up, and I don't stop because I knew if I'd stop, I'd spook them. Right.
Yep.
And anyway, so I get all the way up there, change the camera and get back out. And then when I come back, this is just really cool stuff to learn. What do you think those bucks did? Well, I thought they'd be gone because it was 20 yards. They smelled me. Didn't have my scent stuff on. I'd have had rubber gloves and rubber boots, but I'm sure I stunk to high heaven. Well, I'm walking by and I'm looking again, walking steady but slow. And I'm looking. I said, darn it. Yep, they're gone, just like I thought. But then I looked back 5 foot behind where he was. He had moved behind a hinged tree stump. All I could see was his antlers sticking up in his eyes, watching me go right past him.
Yep.
So anyway, that's a really good story. I forgot what we were talking about now.
Well, the Whitetail University.
Oh, yeah, the university.
Right.
This basically, I've got some bullet points here of, what we're going to teach them. For instance, people don't know about the straight line entry. The industry teaches enter from downwind.
Yep.
This is unsound thinking. Let's take this scenario. If you have a big buck that's bedded 40 yards directly behind your tree, does it matter if you come in from downwind or upwind?
Probably not.
All right. So why do I insist on trying to enter with the wind? Because I want to control where my scent stream is going in a straight line. When I get to my tree, I'm walking with the wind over my back, and I walk right through my number one shot lane and climb the tree. Now what happens is that maybe I was at just a slight disadvantage walking in because mathematically I soiled more ground. But now that I'm in position, mathematically I split my scent up. Because you see, if he comes in from downwind and then checks for and picks up just a little bit of me, and then checks the ground for ground scent, I'm not there because I came in from upwind, okay?
Yep.
And if he comes in from upwind and picks my ground scent up and begins to test the air, I'm not there because I'm blowing the other way.
Right.
I've successfully split my ground scent up from my scent stream.
And you've also stopped him so you can shoot him.
If he stops in my number one
Right.
shot lane, he's stopping right where I want him to.
Yeah, so our school's a one-day. It's a full day seminar all day long. It's located in Western Michigan, and there's going to be lots of habitat stuff to be taught as well. I mean, I talked for a minute about hinge cutting, but hinge cutting, there's a lot of information about that out there, and I think a lot of people know how to do it. But we're not just going to talk about ambush stuff. We're going to teach them how to develop properties as well.
Well, as a matter of fact, each student is going to get to spend like 2 or 2.5 hours with a different master.
Okay.
4 masters teaching. So they'll get the mapping scoop, they'll get the habitat scoop, they'll get the ambush scoop, and they'll get the tactical scoop. Everything that they need to know to arm them to be as prepared. They'll also get the timing information. They will get, the calendar, and that will be taught to where they will at least have a general understanding. So we're going to lay it all out there. I mean, I figure I got the most brilliant minds in the world working with me, and I also have the greatest guys in the world working with me. And our motto is we have no secrets. We want to teach because our goal is to make hunting enjoyable. I do seminars all the time and talk to people, and I say, everybody in the audience, raise your hand if you ever had a fight with your wife over hunting. And the room don't go up, you're all lying. Okay? Either that or your wife's out hunting.
Well, here's the other way to look at it too is, the average mature buck, when he gets to be 5 years old, most of them die of old age.
Right.
And when you think about that, there's no reason. We got to teach people how to properly hunt these animals, because I'll tell you what, the reason I do it, I get so darn shaky. I get big buck fever. I don't even know how I pull it off. I get so shook up. But there's a lot of people like that, and that's why I do it, and that's why I love it, right? If you haven't experienced that, more people got to experience that. It's pretty cool.
Right. Right. No, you're absolutely right. Very cool. Is there anything else you guys want to cover?
Well, I would like to cover one more thing, and that was my team helping me with this property that I did this weekend. And this is just me trying to look out for people out there. I went to this property, man, and there is just absolutely a ton of hiding on it. I'm talking about good hiding. And he had a consultant come in and want a hinge cut and create more hiding, plant switchgrass. He needs to ramp the food up on his property. Forget any hiding. He's got it already, and the bucks are already preferring it. Thermal bedding, and windbreaks and sunny beds. I mean, you couldn't have created it any more better if you'd have done it yourself.
Yeah.
But having, ambush set up on your property in a single day, I went through the property. It was supposed to be a 2-day job, and my price is $12.50 a day right now, soon to go up. But the job only took 1 day. So I gave the guy $800 back, I mean, I'm not out to rip people off, or, I'm an honest man. In other words, look, if the job takes this long, yeah, I'm going to have to take the money. But if it doesn't take that long, because I ripped right through it, I'd rather, like I said, I only suggested the guy on 200 acres. He hanged 12 stands. And that gave him over 24 options for wind. So the wind could not stop him or his dad.
Gotcha. All right, very good. Bill, do you ever do any analysis from the desk with the use of maps and things like that, or do you always go out to ground check too?
Oh, I always start with Josh's Cypros.
Okay.
I mean, you got to have both, man. There's things you can see from the air that you can't see when you're on the ground. There's things you can see from the ground that you can't see from the air. I never used to be much into mapping, but Greg was actually the one that turned me around on that with our Missouri hunt. We went to Missouri and we planned to hunt this spot. Make a real long story short, Greg repicked the spot from his desk and described to me what we were going to find when we got there. And when we got there, this spot was exactly as Greg described it. And I said, man, I've got to learn how to do this, And so I have been, and I've actually developed my own mapping system that I use, using the elevation lines and different things, path of least resistance, and where multiple paths of least resistance intersect, creating what I call concentration points, whatnot. There's a whole lot of things that go into it. But
yeah, to answer your question a little bit further, Jay, about the mapping. So just coincidentally, Bill and I have a 360-acre parcel we're going to do in the next couple of days. Yep. And that's a big piece of property. I wish I had that much acreage, but anyway.
Sure.
So our focus really, it's really changed in the last couple of years, because now we're looking at, when we go to a property, look at habitat, we're looking at, wait a minute, we want to figure out how to hold as many bucks as possible and grow them and keep them from dispersing and give them the setups that allow you to shoot the 5-year-olds.
Right.
That is a real change, because you go in to put up stands. Yeah, they're good stands, but these are the way we're setting up stands now. They're targeting the 5-year-old bucks. Of course, they'll work on any animal that's walking through, but so we use the maps. So before Bill and I are going to go to this property next 2 days, we've got multiple maps that are already laid out with potential. We've kind of got it all designed before we even go. Then you go in, look at the terrain in person, and validate whether your plan will work. So that's the kind of detail we get into when we go to do these jobs. Okay. There's actually a lot more work than you think. It's not just in the field. We probably spend 4 or 5 hours before we even go there.
Gotcha.
Looking at maps and studying them.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was going to say it's almost counterintuitive to, you're trying to keep the bucks there, yet you're trying to find a way to hunt them. And then the way the bucks and the pressure, you naturally you think they don't go hand in hand. It's like they're antithesis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
I mean, my philosophy is I want to have as much good diversity and cover my property as I can. You might say, well, if you do that, they got too many places to hide. You can never shoot them. And I said, I'd love to have that problem, because we know how to shoot them with our setups.
Right. Well, that's good. It's nice that you can kind of put that all together where you can hunt them, but you can hold them. That's a different concept and a concept I think that makes the successful hunter successful and the unsuccessful hunter unsuccessful when they don't understand how that works.
Yeah, well, I had 2 neighbors in the cooperative that wouldn't even talk to me, and still the guns blast over on their property.
Right.
But what's kind of excited me about that is they haven't shot any of the big ones.
Right.
You know, what's the saying about doing the same thing you've been doing? Insanity.
Right.
Over and over again.
Right. Right. Yeah. I hope you guys keep spreading the word. I certainly try to spread the word. Not that it doesn't bother me if somebody shoots a small buck, but I certainly appreciate it when they kill the big one. You know, there are certain reasons, and I would like to see more mature bucks taken over the smaller ones, and that's why I like the information I got from the state of New Hampshire the other day. Just sitting on the ice talking about deer hunting and talking to a state biologist, said we had the best mature buck kill ever in the history of us collecting this data. So it makes me feel like there's some progress out there with to have people hunt the bigger bucks and kill the bigger bucks.
Right. I mean, and I don't want to sit here and say I don't ever shoot little bucks, because my 7-year-old daughter, she's going to be 8 this next year, and I'm going to set her on. She's going to get her first buck.
Right.
I'm excited about experiencing that with her. She's helped me do some of my habitat stuff. She's my, she goes around with me a lot. That's what makes this hunting thing special, is the family side.
Yes.
And I didn't even talk about my buddies. Do I have time to tell one more story?
Sure. Yeah, let's go.
Okay. So I've got 3 really good friends, and we're all about the same age, and we're all out here working. We're putting in a new boundary trail with a dozer, and other 2 of us are putting up a tree stand. Well, they accidentally killed this big blue racer snake with a dozer, 7 foot long.
Yep.
And and they had to leave earlier than us. So we had been sitting in the pole barn, had 4 of those chairs, folding chairs with the bags sitting there. And what they did is they took that snake, coiled it up, and stuck it in one of those chair bags with just the head and a little bit of the body sticking out, right? So we come back, my friend Jake and I, and we're putting the chairs away, and we reach down there, and both of us jump back yelling, and then we proceed to beat a dead snake with a shovel. so they got us. That's the kind of thing, and that's the camaraderie that goes on with when you have hunting property. I did have one more topic, if I could talk about our membership a little bit.
Definitely, yeah. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so our webpage, pressuredeerpros.com, we are going to have a membership, and it's not expensive. And the membership has some advantages. There's discounts for the school. There's discounts for books. We're going to get better pricing for Miscanthus for the members. If they want to get Miscanthus, we put it all together to get better pricing for all of our members. We're going to have instructional videos that will teach some of the stuff we're talking about, and actual in the field things. And our videos aren't going to be perfect. I'll tell you that right now. Our videos aren't going to be fancy. It's the content that's in them. There's videos every month. There'll be additional videos that are going to be teaching stuff. So at least want to let people know that's going to be out there as well.
Beautiful.
Right. Also, I guess there's one other thing I'd like to say is that we're setting up a payment plan for guys that want to come to the school. It's like, okay, this weekend, I charged the guy $1,200 for the day, but that man received at least $1,000 worth of teaching that would have came from the school. When I have a client out in the woods that hires me, as we're going through, if we see a scrape, I ask him, okay, which way is he going? We see a rub, I ask him, which way is the buck going? If we find a dead spot in the wind where it's real windy, but yet right here it's dead, I just teach it whatever comes up as we're going across the property. But mostly what I teach them is how to use the wind, because everybody since the beginning of time seems like they got to have the wind in their face. And you do when you're hunting on the ground.
Yep.
Pretty much. Now, there are some cases where you can blow at them on the ground as well. Michael is the master at that. But that's basically, we're just trying to cover every angle. It's like I said, we may not know every right move to make, but over the last 4 decades, I figured out a whole bunch of wrong ones.
That's a good analysis, Bill. I like that. Excellent. All right. So if by chance we didn't cover enough information here today, and people who are listening are intrigued and they want more information about what you guys are doing, where can they go to find more information?
Well, our webpage is, www.pressuredeerpro, all one word, pros, pressuredeerpros.com. And the webpage is all in there. There's information about our Circle of Masters, each person. There's bios. There's all kinds of information about the school and the services. And there's phone numbers. You're not going to get an answering machine. Well, you might get a phone or a voicemail, but you're not going to get an answering machine if you want to call and talk to us about anything. I mean, that scares me a little bit because my wife, the whole family balance thing. Yep. I'm supposed to be retired. And she said, there you go on that darn deer passion thing again of yours. But I said, well, yes, but you like the money, honey.
Very good. Awesome, guys. I appreciate you stepping into the Big Buck Registry studios and telling us about what's going on. And it's always a pleasure to I always learn from Bill, just sit next to him. So, but I think what you have going on is really, really cool. And I think it's, one of those higher level teaching ideas.
Well, basically we want to be able to take a hunter and recognize whatever level he's at and give him the teaching he needs. In other words, some guys may not need this kind of teaching. They may have a strength in that area, so there's no reason to re-educate them on something they're already good at. But we pick out what they don't know, and we can do that with a simple questionnaire. Most of our students will have to fill out a questionnaire because we want to individualize each student. In other words, how high will you hunt in a tree? What kind of physical shape are you in? Are you willing to spend $10,000 a year on food?
Yeah.
What all this stuff is just personal treatment and personal service. And then our follow-up is what we pride ourselves on. Once we do a job, we stand behind that job, even if it means coming back for nothing.
Gotcha. Very good.
Yeah, and we want to thank you again, Jay. You've made this easy for us. This is my first podcast. Right. and I appreciate how you walked us through it and kept us on track. And it's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Cool. I think there are more to come, and we need to talk to all the pros. And I think so much value here when Bill's encircled himself with an amazing group of people. So I'm pretty excited.
Well, I want to give you my personal thanks and the thanks from the team as well, Jay. And I'll be looking forward to talking to you anytime and working with you, having you on board as one of our masters. And hey, we maybe together we can impact the world.
Well, thanks to Bill and Greg joining us on the show and exploring the habitats. And, of course, we got into a bunch of stuff with Bill and moon phases. And there's so much more to learn from these guys. Really excited that we've teamed up with them. And we're going to explore each and every expert and bring them to you so we can share all that knowledge. And you can continue on listening to the experts as we have through the last 240 episodes. Get out and come into the studios so that we can capture their knowledge and share it with you so you can turn around and use it in your hunt. Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week?
Yeah, it's something that,
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
The youth that's coming up and going to be hunters, future conservationists, and land stewardists and managers of the herd, we got to take time and educate them. And right now is a time where you're starting to think about getting stuff set up for the spring and summer months for your deer herd. As far as food plots and all that, well, take time and get a youth to participate with you, not only from the beginning. A lot of people just show them the hunting aspect of it. They really don't show them how they go out to the woods and prep the stand locations and all that. There's a lot more to it than just, going bow hunting or going shotgun or rifle hunting. You need to get involved if you're ordering seed for your food plots, or you're ordering fertilizer for your food plots, or even if you're doing some kind of native grass vegetation type area for the bedding or a deer herd habitat. Get them involved when it comes to how do you order it, how do you prep the order that you're putting in at your local co-op or wherever you order your seed from, or seed rep or whoever it is. But get them to either one ride along with you when you go there to place your order, or have them around when you make the phone call and let them listen to how you discuss to that person of what you need and what you got going on. If you're going to pull soil samples and do some soil preparation, disking, field cultivating, running a 3-point tiller through your food plots, get them out there. If nothing else, let them stand on the sidelines and get that visual education. That way, when they start getting a little older and they're able to do things on their own, that they have a general idea of how it all works. And that's something that if we all participate in taking a couple youth hunters out to the woods and showing them step by step how it all works, it'll better their odds of being more successful in land conservation and building habitat and prepping for the season.
I love that. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you, or you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, and Blueberry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.